Hello there. Good afternoon, Ewok. Good afternoon, anyone else who happens to have found their way here. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about a thing that is very important to me. In fact, one of the primary facts of my life. But before I get to that, I want to do a couple of very small housekeeping things. Um, First, I've decided to update this on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It keeps with my current schedule of only having class Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I do one on my Monday and I do one on my Friday. And then spend the remaining 4 days reading, applying for jobs, and generally worrying about the future. Aside from that, I also had another thing. I promise I did. Um, oh, until it comes to me, this jacket is evidently camel hair, which I discovered this morning, so that's fun. And yeah, the other thing seems to have escaped my current short-term memory, so I guess we'll let it slide. Maybe it'll come up next time. So anyway, on to today's topic. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact of being an adopted child. I mentioned in the last video that I was adopted. I was adopted when I was 8 years old from a foster home in which I had been living for about 2.5 years, prior to which I was in a state home in the state of Michigan for around 6 months, a little bit more, a little bit less. I'm not really sure. My memory of the time when I was between 5 and 6 is imperfect at best. But anyway, and prior to that, I lived with my biological father. I won't go into too many details on that except to say that he's currently serving a very, very lengthy prison sentence. So anyway, as it stands now, I have been out of my adopted home for just over a decade, and that is good. I'm doing all right for myself, I suppose. But there are things about being adopted, stigmas, casual misunderstandings, and general just a general lack of courtesy. Now, I will couch that statement in a small story from when I had just been adopted. I was, I think I was 9 at the time, I was in 5th grade, so I was 10, and I had mentioned to someone that I was adopted, and their response was to make this face and then ask me, "So, do you pee your pants?" Now, that's a very direct and insulting thing to ask someone, even at 10 years old. As it turns out, that question was rooted in the experience of another adopted boy at my school, whose name was Kenny. I'll forego the surname out of respect, but he did have at the time an occasional pants wetting issue. Nevertheless, that it turned out that thought process actually had permeated my entire student body at the time. So that was not the first time that on saying I was adopted, I received that sort of response, or in fact that exact response, which is very strange. Now, of course, that's childhood misunderstanding, and the ignorance of children can be forgiven, so long as they work to correct it as they age. However, with regard to adoption, that's not really been the case. Fast forwarding a number of years, 18 to be exact, or I suppose 17 actually, last year, I was taking a course in family law. And while I held my tongue for a goodly portion of the semester, I did reach a boiling point with regard to referring to inheritance for the biological children of a particular family unit and the parental rights with regard to those children versus those of adopted children. And I had had this same issue in my course on wills, trusts, and estates, and fortunately I had just been able to take the professor aside and address it, and he made a general announcement. In this course, however, I had made my objection known, and it was, I won't say disregarded. I received an apology, an acknowledgement, and then it just sort of went away from the professor's standpoint. But among the student body, it continued. So I had to take it upon myself to correct this particular failing, which was referring to the biological children as the real children. So the real children of this couple have X, Y, and Z rights with regard to inheritance in this jurisdiction, whereas the adopted children do not. Now, that's a subtle distinction, but a nevertheless slightly offensive one, to imply that I lack some form of reality by virtue of having had essentially shitty birth parents. So, that is frustrating. And the same, granted, it's been toned down and made slightly more polite over time, but that same shifting of facial expression occurs even among my peers today when I mention that I was adopted. So where it used to be sort of a upturning of the face in disgust, now it's a oh, as if having been adopted is some sign of lessness or disability or something of that nature. And I assure you it's not. I am a 100% full and real human being. I am a real boy. And I have many of the same passions and confusions and motivations as any other person. I will say, however, by virtue of my childhood, I do have slightly different viewpoints and attitudes with regard to, in the Judeo-Christian version of things, honoring one's mother and father. As you may have just noticed, I referred to my birth parents as shitty. And I stand by that accusation and depiction because truly as parents they were. And I have, honor is not a thing that is inherent, it's a thing that is earned, at least from me. And perhaps that attitude makes me distinct from the larger population of non-adopted children and adults, being that I'm no longer a child. So I suppose that's sort of what I wanted to talk about broadly. There is one thing that I would like to mention, though, and that is the wonderful work that Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, did, and even posthumously continues to do through his foundation on behalf of adopted children, finding them homes, securing their lives in one form or another, and also the things that the state of Michigan did through setting up programs to fund the education of children who had once been wards of the state. I received a not unreasonable, I hesitate to call it a scholarship, we'll say stipend towards my education, by virtue of having gone to a four-year university, the University of Michigan. And so for those things, I'm incredibly grateful. And I think that those things have helped me to feel better about the negative side of things in my life. Because through the hardships of childhood, I also have a number of, we'll say, darker thoughts than might occur in your more standard family setting. Anyway, I guess in the end, I just want to say that adoption does not make a person better or worse than any other. It just makes them different. And being that every single person in the world is different from his or her counterpart person anywhere else in the world, I don't think that it is ever a bad thing. And I think that it's beneficial to remind people that any difference, no matter how big or small, is just a defining characteristic. Right. But before I get too preachy here, that is all that I really wanted to talk about today. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Be obsequious, purple, and clairvoyant. Take care of yourself. Be well to other people, and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.